Okay guys, I've received tons and tons of support on my latest Mr. Beast versus GM Hikaru. Due to all your guys' support, thank you so much, and this has enabled me to do a part 2. As I said in last video, they played 10 games total together. Last video we only covered the first 2 games. We still have 8 more games to go. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe, like, and share the videos with your friends and family. It really does mean a lot. So what are we waiting for? Let's hop into game number 3 between Mr. Beast and GM Hikaru. The third game with Hikaru versus Mr. Beast also brought a ton of excitement. This time Hikaru also said he would play without both his knights, right? And without the B pawn. So as you noticed, we had a game without both the knights, but this time he's playing without both the knights and the B pawn. But somehow he still manages to win the game. Let's see how. D4, bishop E7, knight F3, E6. Oh, by the way, in both the previous games and this game, Hikaru has played with the black pieces. And then we have bishop G5, F6, bishop E3. This is not a good move by Mr. Beast because now he can't move this pawn and develop his bishop, right? So he might have to fianchetto it. But let's say a move like rook B8 or something, right? And then let's say G3. This could lead to some weakening after bishop takes F3 maybe, and then E takes F3, and then rook takes B2 and stuff. So I don't like this bishop to E3. But bishop E7, knight C3, D5. Yeah, but like I was saying, I don't like the bishop E3 move because it blocks the E pawn. And then G3, castles, bishop G2. And now there's no bishop F3 idea. Now there's no bishop F3 idea because the bishop is here and the D pawn is blocking the bishop from attacking F3. Now you have rook C8, castles, C5. Again, we've seen this idea before. Creating counterplay in the center right away. He's down 2 knights and a pawn, so he has to create some counterplay with c5. So d takes c5, bishop takes c5, b4. I'm not sure if Mr. Beast saw this, but there's actually some tactical ideas. If Hikaru plays this, then there's ideas of rook b1 here, and then after bishop c3 or something, rook takes b7, and you get a very powerful rook. So Hikaru saw that, and just for precautions, he played bishop takes e3, and then after f takes e3, we have rook takes c3, queen d2 attacking this rook, and then we have queen c8 protecting, and then rook a b1, and then rook takes c2. Uh-oh, things are now starting to collapse a little bit, right? This rook is very powerful, it's attacking the queen, it's hitting this pawn. So now we have rook bc1, so here's what happens now. It's pretty intense, but let's see if we can calculate it. So rook takes queen, we got that. If bishop or rook takes queen, actually, you know what, let me show it. So rook takes queen, let's say the other rook takes, then the knight will take, right? But what happened in the game is rook takes queen, rook takes, Hikaru took here to get another pawn, and then we have rook takes f8, king takes f8, and a3. But now this e3 pawn is hanging, and this position, okay, white is still up the piece, right? He has 2 pieces for 1 piece. But if we count the pawns and see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, to 1, 2, 3, 4. So technically, Mr. Beast is only up 1 point here. a4, e5, rook e1. Trying to trade off the rooks and make the endgame more simple. But now rook b3, b5, rook a3, rook d1. And now this is not so clear, right? And then rook takes a4. So now what happens? Mr. Beast, he has 6 pawns to Hikaru's 3 pawns, and Mr. Beast is up a piece. No, sorry. Hikaru has 6 pawns to Mr. Beast's 3 pawns, but Mr. Beast is also up a piece. But now we have knight e1, e4. So watch out. These pawns in the endgame, they can get very dangerous. These 2 pawns, these are very powerful. These are called passed pawns because no other pawns can attack them or stop them from coming to squares. And even more powerful are connected passed pawns. See, these two passed pawns are next to each other, so they can just help each other scroll down the board. Now we have knight c2, rook b, king e7, rook b1, d4, and b6. Maybe trying to trade and then attack this bishop. So that's what happens, takes, and then bishop a8, preserving the bishop, and then bishop f1. What did I tell you? These pawns, see, they keep coming down. Keep coming. And now f5. Remember, white can't take this d4 pawn because of this rook. And then we have rook a6, trying to trade off the rooks. And that's what happens. Rook takes a6, bishop takes a6. But now watch again. The pawns keep coming. Very powerful these pawns are. Knight d4, g6. Look at this. Just a huge pawn chain of what, 5 pawns. That's just crazy. Very powerful. Knight b3, bishop d5. And as we can see here, black is doing way better than fine. Because let's say the bishop gets traded off, right? And then we can see they have a knight to try and defend against 3 pawns, which is very hard to do. King f1, bishop takes b3. What is this move? King f1. He's just blundering this knight. I don't think he saw that the bishop could take the knight. Bishop takes b3, and that's just easy win for black. You just got to trade the bishops, and you're winning in the king and pawn endgame. Now king e1, bishop c2. Okay, now look at this. This is something you do not see. h4, king f6, g4. The idea behind this move is trying to make so that the pawn chain breaks. So after here and here, here and then maybe a bishop d7 move or something to try and create this pawn as a weakness. But instead we have bishop to c4, e3. Look, these pawns were back here when I told you they could be dangerous. Now look at them just strolling down the board, also with the f pawn coming down. Just unstoppable. Even if you had a queen here, right, it would still be somewhat hard to stop these pawns. And a rook, oh my, don't even get me started on a rook. g5 check, king e5, h5, but now there's a simple mate in 4. Let's see if you guys can find it. Starts out with d2 check, king f1, d1 equals queen, king g2, and then find the last 2 moves. We have a bishop check. Remember, guys, every single person to the party. These pawns are guarding important squares. These pawns are making sure that white's 2 pawns don't advance. The king is supporting this pawn. And now what? One piece is not doing anything? You're right, it's the queen. So now king h2 and queen h1. What a game. It all turned around. Well, it was obviously losing or much hard to play before mrbeast blundered the piece. But after that, it was just completely over. So guys, what did we learn from this game? So we learned that these passed pawns, especially these connected passed pawns, can get extremely powerful. As we saw, one of the pawns became a queen, which is the one that delivered the checkmate. The other 2 pawns are super close to promoting too, right? So that is something we always need to watch out. We don't want to be playing against these passed pawns. We want to have the passed pawns. And now let's head in to game number 4. Wow, you might be thinking, why is this game only 10 moves long? Well, guys, here's the thing. GM Hikaru said, I'm not going to play with both my knights. And I'm not going to play with my b7 pawn. And my h7 pawn. So, this is just unreal. And guess who won in 10 moves? By a long shot. Down 2 knights and 2 pawns. GM Hikaru won in 10 moves. Nope, it wasn't a checkmate. mrbeast getting frustrated with blundering his pieces and not playing well. I think he just resigned. Let's see. d4. Bishop e7, same thing as last time. Knight f3. e6. Knight e3. c5. Guys, look. Another c5 move. Going right after this d4 pawn. We've seen this move multiple times. Just going for straight counterplay because he's down material. D takes e5, bishop takes c5, knight a4. This move is okay. It's usually played on the other side of the board to attack something on f5 or g6, but this move can lead to problems such as queen a5 check. So now if you block with your bishop or queen or this knight, such as like bishop d2, then they can simply take this knight on a4. Same thing with your queen. They will not trade queens. They will just take your knight on a4. So Mr. Beast found a very nice move, c3, blocking the check and using the queen to protect this knight. And now we have bishop e7. Okay, and now we have our very first big mistake of the game, bishop g5. This just blunders a piece outright. Bishop takes g5, knight takes g5, queen takes g5. A way you could have prevented it, or like let's say Mr. Beast really wanted to play bishop g5 for some reason, he could have played h4 first, and then let's say after castles or something, then bishop g5, bishop takes g5, knight takes g5. You cannot play queen takes g5 because of h takes g5. Right? So what happens is bishop g5, bishop takes g5, knight takes g5, queen takes g5. And now, what is one idea that Mr. Beast has played a lot? Is fianchetto, right? g3, bishop g2. So now he tries it again, but he doesn't realize he doesn't have his knight here anymore. So then gmhikaru just takes a free rook. Just look at that. This bishop, very powerful, swings down and gobbles a free rook. So then Mr. B says, okay, I want a rook too, and goes knight b6. And then he just blunders that also, because he doesn't see this a pawn. And after a takes b6, this is completely losing. And Mr. Beast just resigned. Very sad first 4 games for Mr. Beast. But stay tuned for part 3, and let's see in those games if Mr. Beast can make his comeback. Thank you all for the tons of support lately. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe, like the video, and share with friends and family. That's all for now, and hope to see you soon.